Thank you, Maria. Well, good evening and welcome to the Council Scrutiny Committee meeting on the 8th of March 2021. My name is Councillor Tom Mahoney and I'm the chairman of this meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public and being attended by members through Microsoft Teams. Before we begin working through the agenda, I will go through some rules on procedure. The web streaming of this meeting is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such times that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member of the committee is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment for up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue. It will be deemed that the member with the connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. Excuse me. For all attendees, could you please switch off your microphones and cameras now? For members of the committee, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking. If you wish to speak during the meeting, please use the raise hands function and wait for me to ask you to speak. The voting during the virtual meeting will use the raise hands function and I will call on the Democratic Services Officer to confirm the vote. Are there any questions before we move into the formal agenda? No. I will now ask Democratic Service Officers to confirm the attendees of this meeting, and this will be for committee members and substitutes only. When your name is called out, please confirm your attendance and we will move into the formal agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go through the committee starting with you, Chair, and then I'll follow that on with the substitutes. So, Councillor Mahoney.
Present.
Councillor Mrs Abarrow.
Present.
Councillor Eccleston.
Present.
Councillor Gillias.
Present.
Councillor Mrs New.
Present.
Councillor Mrs O'Rourke.
Present.
Councillor Picker.
Present.
Councillor Woodhouse.
Present.
And a substitute, Councillor Mrs Parker.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lynn. Well, first item on the agenda is the minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of January 2021. Using the raise hands function, can you indicate you're happy for me to sign these as a true record of the meeting? Well, seems everybody. Has anybody got any issues to raise with those minutes? Please lower your hands, please. Ian, you've got your hand raised. Have you got an issue?
No, just being a bit slow.
Oh, right, yes. Okay. Right. Apologies. To receive apologies for the absence from the meeting. Are there any apologies, Lynn? No.
I have apologies, Chair, for Councillor Cade, and Mrs Parker is here as his substitute.
Thank you, Lynn. Right, declarations of interest. To receive declarations of A, non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. No. B, pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. And C, notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Right, we'll move on then to item 4, which is the Finance Performance Monitoring 2020-21 Quarter 3. So please refer to the report from the Cabinet on the 1st of February 2021 and the RPMS. John, did you want to give us a quick outline on that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, this report sets out the anticipated finance performance position as at the 31st of December 2020. The recommendations in the report include setting up budgets for grants that the council has received. There's also recommendations around slipping capital programme costs into the next financial year, largely as a result of savings as a result of COVID-19. And it also has the performance and financial position for the general fund and the HRA. Do you want me to go through it in a bit more detail, Chair, or shall I open it up for questions?
I think questions, unless anybody else wants any further details. One thing I'd like to make a remark myself before we start off. Given the times that we're living in, I think your job's not easy at the moment to try and figure out what may or may not happen in the future. So I'll just leave that one there, and thank you for the hard work that you're putting in, trying to keep us solvent. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks, I'll pass on to the team.
All right, has anybody got any questions? Please use the raise hand function. Jerry, you're first up.
Yeah, it's not so much a question about the all the reporting. I suppose it's a question to John really, and also around the committee as to the presentation of the report, as to whether we do need to review how we present the report and the meaningful way, so it becomes more of a better tool to look at, because at the moment it's quite a thick, chunky report, which just really 9 times out of 10 just gets nodded through everything. So I'm just wondering partly what this committee's role will be in looking at it, and actually do we need to look at the way that it's presented in a more meaningful way?
I would agree with you, Jerry, and one thing I would like to give some thought to, if it's possible, if we can, as Scrutiny, can see it a little bit earlier. Normally by the time we've seen it, it's already gone through the committee and council, the cabinet, so it's a done deal before we've got a chance to raise it. So is that something we could look at in the future?
I suppose that might be a conversation for democratic services. I know that the realities are the production of this report, and I take your point around it being a chunky report, but given the content that we were trying to provide members with for Q3, then I think on this occasion it did have to be quite a detailed report. I think certainly our desire as a finance team is to try and make the monitoring reports as concise and easy to read as possible. But I'm more than happy to take on board any comments that you've got in terms of making it more user friendly for the reader. But in terms of presenting the information prior to going to cabinet, perhaps that's something I need to take some advice from AFTAB in the first instance. None of the information in there is confidential, so I'm happy to share it. It's just it's working it through with the committee timetables.
Yeah. AFTAB.
Yeah, just to clarify in terms of procedure, it is a report that is taken to cabinet in the first instance, but we can certainly look at the whole procedure, and perhaps it's one that we discuss outside of this meeting, and then if needed report back around both the procedure and the format in which the report is presented to scrutiny.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you, AFTAB. Has anybody else got any questions on the financial monitoring report? If not, we'll move on then to the review of waste and resources, recycling and education, the one-page strategy which is attached. I think it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to read through it all. You've all had copies. Has anybody got any questions around the one-page strategy? Jerry.
Yeah, it's just that within the one-page strategy, I couldn't really see if we should be looking at short, medium and long-term plans within this, because quite clearly when you look back over a period of time, when we have a campaign around recycling, things improve. Immediately as that campaign drops off, after a couple of months, it then reduces again. So I'm just hoping within the one-page strategy that we can actually look at what the medium short, medium and long-term messages would be that come through on that.
Yeah, I think just before Dan, I think is going to want to respond on that, but my feelings on this was the quick, short of a working party of a two-part task, if that makes sense to you, where this is going to highlight and do the, I'm trying to think of the word, informing the public of what our aims to be, and we're doing an in-depth bit over a year as following on straight from that one. Dan, did you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think members will recall that this was a couple of pieces of work we were looking at. The first one was the piece that's before you tonight, which was the campaign work, and the second one was the longer term piece of work about the forthcoming resources and waste strategy. That said, I think I can see what Jerry's getting at there, in that when we do some of these campaigns, they do have a short term impact, but before long they're forgotten about. So I take the point, and I think it would be wise of us to include some of the long term actions in there that we could put in place to make this stick a little bit more, if you like. So if that was the point from Jerry, I think it's a valid one, and one that we should probably take on board in the strategy.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I was making.
Yeah, what I could suggest, once part 2 comes on stream, and I will come to the rest of yous coming on, we could probably use somebody like Matthew Deeves to report on those task group meetings, which will also keep it in the public eye until that comes to fruition, and then follow it on from there. I didn't see which order you've came up on, so I'm going to go with Councillor Lisa Parker first, then Ian Picker.
Age before beauty, Ian.
Well, I just have to see your picture first. I mean, my screen, Ian's tucked away in the corner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to know what our aim is. I mean, what do we hope to get out of this at the end of it? When all is said and done and the work's completed, what is our aim? What do we want to happen? You know, what is the problem that we want this piece of work to solve? That's what we should be addressing. I'd be interested to know really what the aim of this piece of work is. And,
well, Lisa,
success going forward.
One of the problems of coming in as a sub, you weren't at the previous meetings when Dan brought this forward to us. There is a big change in the legislation, which I'll let Dan explain to everybody, and that's what's driving this piece of work. So Dan, if you'd like to just recap what you told us last meeting, very briefly though, please, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and I'm happy to update any members or substitutes individually, but it's largely in response to the forthcoming resources and waste strategy, which the second consultation is due out in the next month, I think. But I would say, in addition to that, there's always the aim for us to increase our recycling rates, decrease the contamination within our recycling because of the financial benefits to the authority of doing so, because we obviously have to pay, for example, for contamination within our recycling, for the disposal costs of that. So whilst there's always the financial imperative for us to do this, and probably the moral imperative too, I should say, there's the specific job at the moment of responding to the forthcoming resources and waste strategy from the government.
Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, and presumably Scrutiny have had an overview of where we are, like our positioning statement at the moment, where we stand in the play of things across the Warwickshire Waste Partnership, or how are we doing on how are things, as my supplement.
I think that's a separate question. It wasn't something that we was looking at, but I'm sure Dan will come back to you on that. Ian?
Well, with respect, Mr. Chairman, there's no point doing anything unless we know where the problem exists in the first place. If we were doing well, we wouldn't need to do this piece of work at all, would we? I mean, we're only doing this piece of work because presumably a problem exists that we are trying to solve.
not sure I agree with you on that. What we're doing, we're scrutinising, putting a piece of work together to aid the implementation of new legislation that's coming in, and also to renew the awareness of what we've already got in place. That was what we set out to do, and that's what we're doing. Ian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's sort of almost following on from Councillor Parker's comments, just looking at who we're intending to consult. Are we considering doing any consultation with the sort of broader public to try and find out where the potential areas that we're going to need to pick up on are, or are we happy that groups like Warwickshire County Council and WRAP can cover that sufficiently? Because the last thing we want to do is put together a communications campaign that doesn't tell people what they need to hear.
Oh, I would. Yeah, Ian, I'm not going to prejudge what the chair of the working party, how they're going to approach this. Right? That's not my role. We've given them guidance. We've asked them to do a job for us. We've told them how long to do it. Who they consult with, I'll leave up to the chair and the members of that working party to decide for themselves what benefits them. We always go with the rule, we follow the evidence. So I won't be part of that working party, so I'm not going to prejudge it. I don't know if you put your name forward, but it's up to that working party on how they monitor, how they go ahead of it. And they'll be reporting back midway through to us. We can raise the questions then as their methodology if we need to. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Right. So I'm going to ask you to vote on this then, if there's no other questions. So are we happy for this one-page strategy and the setting up of the task group? Jerry? Are you indicating yes, or you want to raise a question?
Just voting. I thought we.
Oh, right. Okay. So we're all going to ask you to indicate by raising your hands that you're happy for this one-page strategy to be adopted by the working party that we're setting up as regards waste and resources. So if you can see your hands up, please. It looks like everybody. So, okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is the overview and scrutiny work programme, which is the table is attached. I'm not going to go through that again item by item. Does anybody got any questions or remarks or comments on the work programme? So we just take that as read then. Now to receive, no, item 7, the motions to receive the one to scrutiny, and the one that we've received is the one on flooding. Now, as you're probably aware from the reports we've given you, a task group was set up in 2009 to look at this particular item. You've all got copies of their report. I was actually on that along with Maggie O'Rourke. I think it was the first task group I actually sat on as a councillor. There was a couple of very esteemed councillors on that task group, and I think it was a good piece of work that they did. Now, I would like to suggest as chair, if you look at it, that the recommendations that was put out from that task group are still valid, and I question whether they've been implemented. So my thoughts are to pass this on to the planning strategy working party, because most of it's to do with planning, with a recommendation that we believe that the recommendations from the 2009 report are still valid and should be followed up, and for them to scrutinise and see if they can add to it and report back to us. I also would like to check on ask the officers to check what of those recommendations actually have been implemented. I don't believe many of them have. And I'd like to suggest that we look at developing a public-facing dashboard for future motions so that they can follow, the public can follow the progress and the outcomes of these motions. Does anybody want to add to my or disagree with what I've just said, or ask for clarification? Tony, then Maggie, please.
Yes, Chair. Excuse the pun, but since 2009, obviously a lot of water has gone under the bridge. But yes, it's something that we need to discuss in depth. We need to follow through those recommendations that were made in 2009. As far as I can recall, I can't recall any correspondence to parish councils that I attend as to the issues surrounding their communities regarding flooding. It's a major topic. It's something that we can't sweep under the carpet. It's got to be something that's gone into in great depth, and I think we need to form a group that's going to look at this, and especially we'll bring it up and raise it at Planning Services Working Parties to see how things are progressing and following those recommendations that were made in 2009.
That was one of the actual recommendations that was down here, that a local district forum be set up where officers and all agencies involved in drainage and flooding meet on a regularly quarterly basis to discuss forthcoming work programmes and liaise regarding work schedules. I think parish councils could be, if it was set up, could have been part of that.
Yes, could I just add a little bit on there, because as a borough council, we signed up to the local council's charter in January 2016, and therefore we must, as a local authority, work closely with other authorities, and that includes parish councils.
Yeah, okay. Maggie.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this group was one of the first ones I sat on as well, and it was indeed a very thorough exercise. I believe Councillor Ravenhall was also on the group at the time, and they really did engage all the stakeholders. I think it's good to have this, because it doesn't mean we have to do all the work again, and means that things can move on far more swiftly with having that sort of framework there already. And I absolutely support what's been said before. It is key that all those people, the key stakeholders, are engaged in the process. But yeah, I think it makes absolutely perfect sense when all that work's gone in already, that we use it, we make use of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Is there anybody else? Right. So if you're happy for this to be sent off to the Planning Strategy Working Party with the recommendation that they look at the report that was produced in 2009 and make comments or changes to it, then report back to us. I think I've asked for them to report back about September time. Please indicate by raising your hands. I think that's everybody again. Thank you. And that was the last item on the agenda. So I'd like to thank you all for your attendance.